Hey everybody, this is Brian Aiello, and episode number 8 of Origins, Stories on Creativity. I welcome Tracey Linderman. She's a Montrealian from Canada. She is also a journalist. She writes exclusively about music, has her entire life, specifically the punk scene. She was a very good conversationalist. Distinct pleasure having the opportunity to speak with her. BrianYellow.com. Check it out. There'll be new fiction on there eventually. I switched hosts. Things look a little bit bland at the moment, but we'll fill it back up. Follow me on Twitter. Constantly putting art on there, interacting with other authors, looking for guests. If you feel like talking for an hour, hit me up. In the meantime, enjoy my conversation with Tracey Lindeman. Here we go. How are you doing, Tracey?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Let's see. So, how do we introduce you? You're from Montreal.
Yeah, yeah, born and raised.
Oh, fantastic. And your education system was a little bit different than what we are used to in the United States. How did you go through school?
Um, yeah, so in Quebec, we have a school that's kind of between high school and university. It's not mandatory. You can attend if you'd like to, but it's the fastest way to get to university if you want to continue on there. So it's called CEGEP,
Hmm.
which is an acronym for some long French uh, or a term, but it
Do you
basically
speak
means
French?
college. Yes, I speak French.
Oh, fantastic. So you grew up in Montreal.
Yeah, I did.
It's a,
We're Montreal Anglophones are a pretty small community. Every time I speak to an American and I tell them I'm from Montreal, they're like, "Oh, but your English is so good." It's like there's a reason.
well, I mean, it's an English-speaking country primarily, right?
Yeah, yeah, but there's 8 million people in Quebec, and more than half of them are bilingual, and a fair number of them are only unilingually French speaking. So yeah, but yeah, there's lots of English people in Montreal, lots of students. So going back to the school thing, so um, yeah, so what happens in high school is that it goes to grade 11, which is unlike the rest of Canada and the United States, as far as I'm aware. Um, Meaning, I graduated high school when I was 16.
Okay.
And I was like, what am I going to do now? So I had applied to CEGEP, which is free to attend, minus the cost of your books and like an administration charge of, at the time, it was $120 a semester. So
Wow.
yeah, it's probably more expensive now, but it's still really cheap. It's like an
That's
extension of high school where you can
uh-huh.
kind of specialize in, um, more like just do more specialized stream of studying. So
What'd you
instead of just
specialize in?
doing, uh, it was very specialized. It was creative arts.
Creative arts. That's nice. I got my degree in creative writing. What exactly were the arts that you specialized in?
Well, creative arts is kind of known as one of the programs for people who don't know what they're doing. So the first one would be social science, social
Okay.
studies, and the second one is creative arts. So I did that, and I
Okay.
did a program within it called Arts and Letters. So it was more literature and art history based. There were like some more journalism oriented streams that involved broadcasting that I didn't do, although I did do intro to radio and TV as part of that
Well, you got a great
program as
voice.
well. Thanks. um, yeah, so that's kind of uh, how education works in that respect. And then, of course, I went on to university at Concordia University, also in Montreal, and went to journalism school there.
Oh, great. So what made you interested in writing to begin with?
Um, I spent a lot of my teen years writing really bad poetry, like every other teenager.
Did you allow anybody else to gauge it for you, or were you gauging that on your own?
Oh, like I think I got in Seja, don't look this up, please, but I got a couple pieces, like couple poems, published in the student newspaper, whatever. But in retrospect, they really make me cringe.
Oh no, there's nothing
They,
wrong with cringing at your own creativity. I think everybody does that.
but yeah, I read a lot. I spent a lot of time at the library, in school, just taking out books and reading them super fast, like 500-page books in a weekend kind of thing.
Hmm.
And that was kind of my introduction to reading and writing. In terms of extending my experience in the writing aspect, anyway, I in CEGEP, I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to go to university because most of my family members had not gone, and I
Hmm.
wanted to be better and different than them. And so what I had done is, I did a bunch of different random classes, and I had a teacher in CEGEP who is named Ernest Tucker, and he was an old journalist in Montreal, and he kind of took me under his wing and taught me, a little bit about the industry and about writing and stuff like that. And then at the same time, when I was uh, in CEGEP from the ages of 17 to 19, I started going to a lot of concerts. And I used to bring this, old black and white film camera with me to these shows because there was a photo lab at the school that I would spend an inordinate amount of time in, just, testing things out, trying to be a photographer. But I realized I was maybe not a great photographer. I'm not bad. I'm an amateur, certainly not a professional, but I decided to uh, apply to journalism school around the same time that I had to come up with an exit project to leave CEGEP. It's like writing a final like exit exam, but it was a project instead of an exam. And so I decided to combine this, love of photography, music, and writing, and kind of make a magazine. So I just, took a bunch of photos,
Huh.
interviewed a bunch of bands. They were all very nice and obliging, with my 19-year-old self. Or no, I was 18 at the time. And I made a magazine, and that's what I used to graduate, and it's what I used to get into journalism school.
So did you have an interest in doing musical reporting prior to doing the magazine?
To be honest with you, I don't entirely remember how interested I was, but
Hmm.
music writing seemed like the thing I wanted to do at the time because, combine two things that I loved. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? Music and writing. Like, it's great. Uh,
Do you play
uh,
music as well? Are you a musician?
I'm learning. I tried guitar when I was younger. Didn't love it as much as I thought I would. My brother plays guitar, and I come from a pretty musical family, but I'm learning drums now, so
Oh,
that's
okay.
good.
I would love to learn guitar. I just cannot make both hands do separate things.
It's challenging.
Yeah. That's why I respect anybody who does music. It really is impressive. My wife plays really good guitar and piano and violin and pretty much any instrument on the face of the earth, and it's so impressive.
Yeah, I'm always so envious of those people. My grandmother, who immigrated from Holland with some of her kids, and my grandfather in 1955, uh, she plays the spoons.
Right, really? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
as well as piano, organ. A bunch of my family members play guitar. No one, to my knowledge, plays drums or bass, but yeah, definitely there's some musical, maybe not necessarily like a professional talent, but at least some interest. My brother's really into it. He has a collection of guitars, so
That's really fascinating. So we're building a magazine. We're reporting on bands. We're graduating from a French acronym that I did not write down, so I'm never going to be able to
CEGEP,
remember.
yeah. Yeah.
What is that exactly? Can you give it the letters?
CEGEP. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head what it means. It's like collège, um, something. Études professionnelles or something along those lines. But yeah, it's kind of a go between high school and university where you can choose your program, but there are mandatory classes that you have to do to be able to complete your credits to graduate. But you do have some choice. So unlike high school in Quebec at the time, where basically you had no choice in the curriculum that you studied, at least this way you had a little bit more freedom to direct your studies in a more specialized way.
Who did you gear? I'm sorry, did you aim yourself at specific bands, or did you just basically?
Yeah, well, I don't know exactly what got me interested in punk rock, but I spent a lot of my youth watching Much Music, which is Canadian MTV, basically,
Okay.
and watching tons, like crazy amounts of music videos and listening to the radio all the time. I used to tape things off the radio, make myself mixtapes and stuff like that. So, but that was earlier in my life. I guess I was, you know, gravitating towards more pop music, but my parents loved classic rock. So I also grew up with that. And I grew up with like the oldies station here that played a lot of Motown. Punk rock kind of came about um, as I think I was searching for a style of music to kind of call my own, a way to
Hmm.
identify, a way to uh, express in the ways I felt different from everyone else.
Hmm.
Um, and maybe it started with like punk, pop punk kind of stuff, like Blink 182, and that was kind of like the gateway drug, I guess. So
Blink 182.
yeah, like Psalm 41 or whatever, because it was on TV at the time.
Yeah.
I'm 30, almost 33 now, so at the what year was that when Blink 182 like did
Uh,
the album with the naked running there?
I do not know. You're talking to the wrong person.
Yeah.
My music knowledge is so low. I might as well just call myself illiterate.
Okay.
I do know the Red Hot Chili Peppers are considered punk.
By who?
I don't know. Somebody I heard on the internet. I have no, they're not. What's the definition of punk according to the world?
Well, people, when you say punk rock, they often think of bands like the Ramones and the
Uh-huh.
Clash and the Sex
Hmm.
Pistols, kind of the originators, the forefathers, Iggy Pop, even like, pre-punk stuff like Velvet Underground. If you've read the book Please Kill Me by Legs McNeil, you would think that that's that's a book I've read so many times.
What
It's
is
been
that
like
about?
the full title is Please Kill Me, an oral, uncensored history of punk rock. And it's, so as I mentioned, in an oral history style. So it's just, different musicians and people in the scene telling the story of New York punk, the origins of the Ramones, how Punk Magazine started, how it, influenced punk rock and how punk rock influenced it. Um, and yeah, I think I first took that book out from the library when I was like 17 years old. So it made a really big impact on my life. It made me take out some CDs from the library and find out more about some of the less famous bands that were in the book that I didn't really know about at the time. Look those up, and then that leads to other bands and other bands and other bands, and suddenly hundreds of bands, hundreds of songs, thousands of songs. I know the words to so many songs. I can't even imagine what important information has been pushed out of my brain as a consequence.
So, in terms of punk, journalism flies in the face of that, doesn't it? You're reporting on something that doesn't really want to be reported on. Would I be right in assuming that's kind of where punk originates from, the kind of anti-social, anti, what's it called? What am I looking? There's a word I'm looking for.
Anti-authority,
Yeah, there you go.
anti-authoritarian.
And when you become a journalist, you're kind of assuming authority. You're assuming an authority on something, though, aren't you?
Well, you'd be surprised how many. journalists are current or former punk rockers. I think journalism is supposed to question authority
Yeah,
at
that's
its
true.
core, right? And so it's a natural fit for a lot of people. But journalism is a really broad term these days. It could mean a profile of an interesting entrepreneur or, musician or artist, or, it could be like a nice profile of them, or it could be maybe not such a nice profile of them. You see a lot of those with really controversial business people and politicians, for example.
Hmm.
Um, so journalism is a really broad term now. It used to mean writing like hard news stories, like going out to the murder or the fire overnight and like, collecting information. It's still that now. It's just become a broader stream as more publications have come online to host different forms of journalism and different voices too.
Do you find yourself a fan of Hunter S. Thompson and the guerrilla movement?
Um, am I a fan? Well, I've read a few of his books. I have a few of his books. I think that he was a really interesting writer, caricature, and I've been a subscriber to Rolling Stone magazine since I made my first money delivering newspapers.
Oh,
So for more than, I've been a subscriber to Rolling Stone for more than 20 years at this point. And so, and, if you read Rolling Stone, you know that they tend to paint Hunter S. Thompson as a saint, right? Like there, if there is ever to be a hagiography published about him, it would definitely be in Rolling Stone, I'd say. But yeah, like he is a really inspirational character just because he is so uh, crazy, like drug fueled, experimental, no holds barred kind of person. And when you're a little bit anti authority, people like that can make a pretty big mark on you too.
hmm. Which is the punk. I mean, when I think of punk, I think of him for some reason. I just love his style of writing in terms of just anti-authority. So we're starting journalism school.
Mm-hmm.
We've written a magazine on music, and
Yeah,
primarily punk.
yeah, it was
Uh,
like metal and punk at the time. I was also really into metal. Maybe now not so much.
Not so much anymore. How come?
No, no, it just my personality and energy was more suited towards punk rock,
It
I'd
still is
say.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah, you love it still.
Yeah.
You have the vibe of a punk rocker.
Thanks.
Especially looking at your Twitter photo, I was like, man, that woman loves some punk rock. So what is it that you did graduate with a journalism degree, I
Yeah, from
imagine. Yeah.
Concordia. Yeah.
And you started writing immediately?
Oh, I was writing before I graduated for sure. Like when I entered university, I was 19 because my birthday's in the summer, so I had turned 19 over the summer after finishing CEGEP. And yeah, I that was 2003, and in September 2003, I started writing for the student newspaper because I thought that's what you did as a journalism student. You wrote for the paper, so I started writing immediately. Um, and the way that a lot of student newspapers in Canada work, I don't know about the United States, but in Canada, they often do like election based positions. So you have to qualify to run in the election. And the threshold for running in the election was you have to have had contributed to 4 recent issues. And they ran a by-election in November for a few editorial positions that they hadn't filled at the end of the previous year. And so I ran for one of them, uncontested. I became the copy editor.
Yeah, I hope you won. Okay, good.
Yeah, of the newspaper 2 months into school, and I stayed involved in the student newspaper until I graduated.
It's an
Uh,
experience that'll definitely shape you a little bit.
yeah, for sure. I had like 4 different editorial positions while I was there. So I went from copy editor to lit arts editor, and then I went to fringe arts, which meant visual art, music. digital art, design, stuff like that. And then I became the editor-in-chief of the student newspaper. And then I graduated to the board of directors where I stayed for my final year of school.
Interesting. So what's the board of directors?
Oh, it was just like the board that oversaw the running and the management of the student newspaper and dealt with, the university as well, because student newspapers, a lot of them get student levies. And so there's like an element of accountability and communication with the university, the larger university around it as well.
That's fascinating. I'm not sure if that's the way journalism works in universities down here. Unfortunately, I did my degree in creative writing, so all I did was write fiction and work with the theater department on the periphery, just basically watching and seeing how stories are told. How do you think being in a, I don't know, would you call that a developmental role in the newspaper publishing? How
um,
did it shape you, basically, as a writer,
being,
as a content
yeah.
creator?
Oh, being on the board, like, was just a way of maintaining continuity, right? Because the editors change every year, or sometimes
Oh,
even more quickly than a year. Um, Sometimes you need people to stay on to make sure that there's some institutional memory, and so on and so forth. And so that was more my role on the board of directors. It wasn't for any grand reason. It was more functional or operational.
oh, that's interesting. So you were already graduated when you were on the board, or no, your senior year,
It was my last year of university. Yeah.
but you were working with people who'd already graduated.
Some of them had graduated. Some of them were just members of the community, of the university community, I should say. Um, and also the business manager of the paper, who was like the only constant in that revolving door of student
Oh, he
newspaper
doesn't go
experience.
anywhere. That's the only permanent job in terms of
Yeah,
the continuity, the voice of the newspaper.
yeah.
And were you able to, I don't know, rub elbows with the people on the board and talk about the future, your future going out of the university?
Um, no, no, the
No,
people on the board, just forget about the board. Let's
it
just
did not
forget
help
about
you
the
as a
board.
writer
Yeah,
at
no,
all. I know.
no, it didn't help. But I was also part of like um, a Canada-wide university student press organization called Canadian University Press, which still exists today. It's a very old institution, and it was like kind of a platform where a bunch of different newspapers from across the country could become members, and then you kind of host like training events. Like there was a national conference every year where people love to go and like attend sessions and meet more experienced and established journalists, and kind of rub elbows with them. That was the more interesting part for a lot of student journalists, not just myself, but
Mhm.
everyone else. The opportunity to meet people who were doing the same thing as you from all over Canada, and also talk to these journalists who were on TV, on the radio, like their bylines were in the city newspaper, the national newspaper. Um, that was definitely a more one of the more interesting things I got to do when I was in university.
So you are, when did you graduate?
Uh, 2007.
2007.
Yeah.
You are now thrust out into the professional world that doesn't really seem to need journalists anymore or something along those lines. It's so hard to get a job, it looks like anyway.
Yes.
What's life like for a journalism graduate in 2007?
Well, I became not a journalist. So I had like just to add some context.
Sure.
I had started writing for the alt weekly in Montreal called the Montreal Mirror when I was 19. So I was still in university. I was freelancing outside of the student university environment and in like an actual like city context.
Nice.
And so when I left school, I continued that relationship where I was writing, every now and then for this weekly newspaper that doesn't exist anymore. Um, and
Is that a sad thing? Was that a traditional type of Montreal rag?
Yeah, well, because of my Montreal's bilingual nature, there were two English ones and two French ones, speaking specifically about alt weeklies, and now none of them exist.
None
Or
of them.
no, sorry, maybe Vor does. Sorry, Vor. But but it's yeah, like it's not a lucrative business for sure. But when the Mirror closed, I started a newspaper uh, online originally, and then also in print with a few people who had also, uh, you know, written or edited for the Mirror, and I was part of that for about 8 or 9 months before I left and started working at CBC. So what I had done when I graduated school is um, I I had a job like working in an office, just so I could pay back my student loans, which of course you'll laugh at me, maybe partly in sadness, but I owed $14,000 for my education.
It's okay. I defaulted on my student loans and now owe $150,000.
No, but whenever I tell Americans how much I owed for school, they're always like, "Oh my God, I hate you so much," and then I tell them how much I pay in tax.
Well, how much do you pay in tax?
Well, the rate to do your income taxes in Quebec and Canada, because you pay income tax to both governments, it can be almost half of your income. Um, the bracket that I was in last year was the total tax rate was 41%. So, you know,
Wow.
it pays
Do
for
you
your
think
education.
your quality of life fits that 41% number?
Yeah, for sure. If I
Yeah.
get cancer, I don't have to worry about being bankrupt. It's great.
I love Canada. I really do. I think it's a beautiful country. I love Montreal. I think it's a wonderful city. I've only been once. I cannot wait to go back. I
Don't
hear
come in the
from
winter.
it was in the winter, honestly. It was in February.
It's
And
a
tell me,
horrible
you know what? I
place.
want to ask you a question. We were up in February. It was cold. It was snowing. It was really, really windy. I've never felt a more brutal wind in my life. And we're walking along the sidewalk, and we noticed all these people are standing like inches away from us behind. Is that a Montreal thing where you just find the people on the sidewalk that are walking and you follow behind them so you can head off the wind?
Oh, I think it's just because we're impatient. Like
Oh, is that what it is?
yeah, I'm definitely like an aggressive sidewalk walker. Like, weaving in between people. Like we drive that way too. Like if you like people like drive really close to each other in the city. If you slam on the brakes, you're screwed.
Oh, I'm in New York City. I understand aggressiveness, but these people, they would hug you. I mean, they would get like right behind you and they would like walk next to you. It felt like they were listening in our conversation.
Maybe they were.
Maybe.
Were you having an interesting conversation?
Probably. I'm an interesting conversationalist, constantly talking. I don't even know what I say most of the time.
I think that's just part of our culture.
Okay. Well, I love it. I really do think it's interesting. 41% does sound like a lot of money though to spend on taxes.
Well,
Um,
you have to consider like, what do you get in exchange? To live in Quebec, it's a different experience to living in the rest of Canada for sure. Like I have a lot of friends who live outside of Quebec, and their cost of living is generally much higher when you live in a city. To live in Toronto, to live in Vancouver, like you're going to pay 3, 4, 5 times the rent I pay here. We have rent control in Quebec province wide, so it's things like that that make it a really easy place to live, and in my case, get trapped in. But I
that's really
am
fascinating. So, I mean, the New York is dying. I mean, the bohemian aspects of it are going away. And I get really sad because there's not really a lot of artists living here. I have no clue where the Broadway actors go. Off Broadway is going away.
They live in boxes
They
in
live in
an
boxes, I
alleyway.
guess. They live in Jersey. They live far, far away. And Montreal is going to maintain that. They get to keep you because they're rent controlled. That's really cool.
Yeah, well, I'm actually going to Ottawa for a year pretty soon, just for my partner's job. But uh, yeah, I've lived here my whole life. I've had the luxury of travel for sure. I've traveled into some really cool places around the world, but Montreal has always been my home. I've never lived anywhere else. I went to school here. All of my schooling was done here. So I have like a really different maybe perspective, uh, than a lot of people who I met through the university system who had come from other provinces to study in Quebec. But yeah, it's a people, like a lot of people who come to visit from outside of the province, whether it's from another country or whether it's from another province, or another continent even, they often feel like Montreal is like more European than anywhere else in North America.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I had that sense when I was there. It is a very European-esque city.
Yeah, it's the architecture. The city is celebrating its 375th anniversary this year. So it has some pretty old buildings. It's the bilingualism, speaking more than one language just naturally seems exotic, right?
Yeah.
And it's people's like way of life, I guess. A little bit European, a little bit North American.
So how do you think? So you started your own newspaper online
Yeah, and in print. Yeah.
and in print, and that was to take up the vacancy of the disappearing free presses.
Yeah, the alternative weeklies. Yeah. So like the Village Voice of Montreal, for example.
Do you think that you experienced what caused the alternative weeklies to collapse, or was it a different experience altogether?
Well, I was a freelancer, so I don't really know exactly what happened. But the Mirror had been bought by a huge media conglomerate here, which operates business first, right? Culture second. And so it just wasn't making good money. Like, how can you make enough money to run a free newspaper with a huge distribution when the only ads that you have are for concerts and for like strip clubs and
Hmm.
escort services,
Yeah.
Like it just was unsustainable to run the newspaper, to have staff who were like, to have people who were on staff and then also to pay freelancers. uh, I don't know what their margins were, but I guess they looked at the spreadsheet and they were like, yeah, let's close it.
How long did they keep it?
I don't know how many years it was, but the closing was very like unceremonious. They just decided that the next issue would be the last.
That's
There
horrible.
was like, there was no like grand farewell or anything like that. And so even more, it became obvious that there was going to be a huge vacuum that needed filling. And so that's why we started the newspaper.
And how did that work out?
Well, I wasn't there for very long, but it still
Oh, it's
exists
still.
today.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. But most of the founders are not part of it anymore. We've all gone on to do different things and so on and so forth. I left because I just couldn't afford to bootstrap unexpectedly a newspaper at the start of my, freelancing career. And so I went to go work at the CBC, which is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, which is like the NPR of Canada.
So I know that your intentions going into the future are a little bit different from where you've come from, right? In terms of what you want to do with your writing and your experiences.
Meaning,
Where, well, you want to write about music going forward.
do I want to write
You
about
want
it?
you want to go back to your roots, basically.
Um,
Do you want to get back to your roots? I'll just point it out. I'll ask you an actual question. How about that?
yeah.
Do you want to
So,
get back to your roots?
yes, but not in a churning them out kind of context.
Hmm.
So I kind of let go of music writing after doing it for a few years for a bunch of different reasons. One of them being I just didn't think I had like a critical enough voice to write about music in a way that like people would care. But also, I found myself like going to shows and not really enjoying them because I was so preoccupied with interviewing people before or
Oh,
after.
that's really interesting.
And so I was kind of like, when the thing that you love also becomes the thing that you hate, like you kind
Hmm.
of have to pick one.
Hmm.
So I picked to keep loving it. And I'm glad that I did. Um, And so I just kind of became like a generalist, like writing about whatever I found interesting. At some point, that turned into business. I think the genesis of that was because when I was writing for the Mirror, I was, because it was an alt weekly, you weren't writing hard news. You were writing more community oriented news and stories about cool people doing cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Montreal, at the time that I really focused on my freelancing career, was starting to become um, a really big startup center for technology startups.
Yeah,
And
that's
it
how I
just,
discovered you actually, is exploring technology on Twitter. That's where I found your voice anyway.
yeah, so like technology startups and my freelancing career kind of happened sort of at the same time. And I naturally gravitated towards it because it was more of the same. It was writing about cool people doing cool stuff.
Hmm.
So it just turned into more business writing, as time went on. And so I kind of carved out a little niche, like writing about um, these startups and founders and entrepreneurs and where they came from and what they're doing next. And yeah, that's kind of the beat that I've been following. Although, um, I'm definitely not married to startups as a beat that I cover. Like I find it all very interesting, but I also like writing about cool people that aren't entrepreneurs or different businesses that aren't technology related necessarily. For example, I found like recently, an interest in writing about cannabis and this whole, legalization thing that's going on in Canada. It's a really interesting thing. Before legalization became a topic of conversation in Canada, Canadians are looking at what happened in Colorado and seeing like, would this be a good model to use? I like it because it's business, but it's also related to social. It has a lot of social aspects as well as social issues,
Hmm.
um, and the quasi legality or decriminalization in some jurisdictions of the drug make it an interesting and really complicated kind of nugget to unwrap. So I've found myself looking more for story ideas in that realm at the moment.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like doing a puzzle.
That's fascinating. So, what are you discovering? I'm interested in that subject as well,
Like, what am I discovering?
about the whole legalization compared to Canada, Colorado.
Well, I think Canada is really determined to um, legalize it within a certain framework,
You guys are taking your
which,
time.
well, policies like this take a lot of time because we're talking about legalizing something that has been illegal for a really long time. And what does that mean, for example, for all the people who are in jail on possession, convictions?
Whose
Um,
lives have been destroyed already, and there's no chance of ever recuperating what's been
yeah,
lost.
and what does it mean for harm reduction? In Canada, like we have the same kind of fentanyl problems as that exist in the United States. Uh, you know, People in general are starting to become more interested in decriminalization or legalization for more than just cannabis, for other drugs too. But then how far do you go? And
Yeah,
then,
the whole waterfall argument.
yeah, yeah. And then it's also like selling to minors, like that's still illegal. You can't sell to people who are under the age of 18. What kind of sentence do you give them? It's making new laws too. In the previous government that we had, it seemed as though whenever there was a topic of conversation that the government didn't really want to address, it got forced through the Supreme Court instead. So, for example, prostitution in Canada is one example where the government just didn't make a law, and so people contested it through the court system. Same thing with dying with dignity, or
Hmm.
euthanasia, I guess you would call it. It was same thing. Same thing happened there. The government failed to make a law, and so people contested it in court. So this new government, the Trudeau government, I think has kind of differed a little bit from the previous government on that, in that they're they're looking to actually make a law after many years of requests from people, but still they're still looking to make a law instead of forcing it to go through the courts by lack of action on the dossier.
I wonder if you are any concerned about what's happening in this country too with the Affordable Care Act being repealed and replaced with something absolutely ridiculous. If you make a law, it doesn't necessarily mean it's cemented in stone or carved in stone. You can easily repeal it and be
Yeah,
back to
well,
square one.
that's going to have to be, pushed through your court too, your Supreme Court. So this is what happens when the government fails to do its job. It goes through the courts. So people will contest it. I'm sure the ACLU will contest it in court. Other people and organizations will do it too. Just like with the travel ban, it's going through the court system now.
It's good that it's in the courts. I like that. The discussion continues and it's not just the law because somebody dictates that.
Yeah.
It's what democracy is all about, I guess.
Yeah. The Canadians look at the United States, maybe not all Canadians, I can't speak for all Canadians, but a lot of Canadians look at the United States and what's going on there now, especially with healthcare. And we're thankful. Like our system is like definitely not perfect. Like if I break a toe or whatever and I go to the emergency room, I'm going to be waiting a really long time to see somebody. But I can go, and like eventually I will be seen, and eventually I will go home and I won't have a bill in my bag for a few $1,000s just because of it. So
yeah,
it's definitely not perfect, and people can wait a really long time for things that are actually quite important, like MRIs, for example. But and that's kind of created this two-tiered healthcare system where if you pay, you can get it tomorrow, but if you want to do it in the hospital, you'll be waiting a year. But at least for the people who don't have a lot of money, they're not screwed.
So it sounds like you've gone into the direction of people. You're more interested in where us as a human race are going.
Yeah, I think having grown up in a city like Montreal, in a province like Quebec, which had student protests for a year last time they tried to raise the tuition. It's a very socially minded place. It's a really complicated place to live. There's a lot of nuances that you just can't explain to people who are from outside of the province. Mm-hmm. It's a thing that has to be felt, definitely. But yeah, like the social or common good, is a thing that inspires a lot of Quebecers, and I think I'm just one of them.
Fantastic. And what's the future got for you? You're going to Ottawa. That sounds horrible. I don't know anything about it other than it's really cold.
Well, it's probably about the same temperature.
Oh, you think so? Okay.
As Montreal. It's a little bit colder maybe in the winter, but it's not so different. Yeah, whenever I tell people I'm going to Ottawa, the first thing they say is, why?
I know. I was like, oh, you're living in Montreal, you're going to Ottawa. It's horrible.
And then the second thing is, it's not that bad. But yeah, so I'm doing that. I don't know for how long. Maybe we'll come back. Maybe we'll go somewhere else. I'm working on a book proposal to write a book with a musician that I know here, mm-hmm. About punk rock touring. Doing your own tours, like planning your own tours and all that, mm-hmm. driving yourself across the country.
Which is like the future of the music industry, isn't it? In terms of making money, you have to get yourself out there in front of an audience.
Well, I think that was always the case. Musicians don't make money on albums, just like authors don't make money on books unless you got a bestseller, right? Like, yeah. If you got an advance, and it doesn't sell, you owe that money back. It's the mm-hmm. same thing for musicians. So musicians have always made their money on tour. And I feel as though, I don't know, I don't really know anything about mainstream music other than what I read in Rolling Stone magazine, so I really can't comment. But it seems as though it's getting easier for bands to get audiences out now because of the internet. So maybe touring is going to continue to be the most lucrative thing, but also they're self-publishing their music too,
Hmm.
and self-distributing through sites like Bandcamp and stuff like that. So, you know,
Yeah.
maybe it's getting a little easier for these bands to make a living that way.
I was having a conversation with an artist today. We're scheduling an interview for later on this month, and he was talking about the corporatization of the art world and how difficult it is to get an audience. And basically, speaking of that as well, it just seems like the corporate America aspect of things, or not corporate America, but the corporate aspect of things is being pushed to the side a little bit, being told that they're not wanted or needed anymore. Basically, what I mean by the whole lack of you need the tour to get an audience. You don't need you can't just put an album out anymore and let it sit in a record store and make money for some corporate entity. You have to be out there involved.
Yeah, but what does corporate mean to you? Like, does it
Like the
mean
record
Sony?
label,
Yeah,
like
does
the
it mean
publisher.
Sony or like Def Jam or something like that, or does it mean Bandcamp? Like Bandcamp is still a corporation. People still distribute music, and
You
Bandcamp
know
still makes
Bandcamp?
money that way.
You know Bandcamp? My wife's done work with them before. The women's music organization.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, she loves them. Donated tons of money to them.
Yeah, but they're still a corporation, right?
Not
Like
a
it's
nonprofit
yeah.
though, right? They're not trying to put out labels and make money off of people's work, are they?
Well, I don't know about like their profits and stuff like that, but yeah, like I'm just saying, like what does corporate mean? Like Bandcamp has democratized the distribution of music for sure. Like you can just like MySpace, I guess, did before that, and Facebook continues to do so as well. You can just like upload it to the internet, and then it's out there. So that's a really cool thing. Uh, to do. But in terms of corporations being told, like being pushed aside, like I think it's just different corporations. Uh, and also like the whole rise of content marketing is corporations trying to compete for attention with
Yeah, with everybody
with
else.
legacy publishers and with each other too. So um, I don't know. America is still very corporate.
Do you think that Canada's corporate? I mean, I know.
Oh yeah, for sure. Canada's not some like weird, awkward cousin.
No, I mean, you guys are. I mean, we're basically the same,
Yeah.
except I have to like give my passport at the border now for some reason.
Oh, we've been doing that for years.
Yeah, but it used to be a driver's license.
Yeah, yeah. Things have changed with recent governments. The border,
Yeah.
the border being one of them, right? Um, I don't really know what to say about that other than that it sucks.
Well, and I hope the future has a lot of good things for you.
Thank you.
What else do you think?
What else do I think?
Yeah.
Um, if you are listening to this and you want to hire me, get in touch.
How can I hire you? What would they be hiring you for?
Oh, just, writing articles if you're interested in my book idea, so on and so forth. I wouldn't be a good freelancer if I didn't put a plug in somewhere,
No,
right?
absolutely
So,
not. That's exactly what we're here for. And your website, I'm going to put that in the show notes, and along with your Twitter as well.
yeah,
Um,
my email is on my Twitter account. It's the best
Perfect,
way to find me.
perfect. And I really enjoyed talking with you. I hope this is just the beginning, and maybe we can revisit another time and see how things work out, especially when you have a better sense of what you're doing with the book. Have you started
Yeah.
it yet?
We've written like part of the proposal, part of the structure.
How
It's
does
my
that work
first book,
exactly?
so I don't know. I asked a few people who've written books how they wrote their book proposals, and then I'm just kind of taking their advice, and seeing how it goes. It's like pitching articles. Sometimes you hear back right away, sometimes you never hear back. I'm kind of approaching it the same way, but I think we're both interested in publishing it no matter what. Obviously, having a publisher would be much better.
As opposed to going the non-traditional indie route?
Yeah, just for distribution's sake. Like distribution, as I learned running a newspaper, is like it's a whole other operation, right? Like trying to like you made it, you put all the effort into making something, and now getting people to actually get it and read it, it's a whole other beast.
Oh, that's
So
true. I mean, that's a monster an effort, and that seems to be what everybody is trying to do. Making the thing is fine, but then getting it into underneath eyeballs is very difficult.
yeah, it's the same thing that drives all these companies to do content marketing, right? Everyone's competing for attention.
Hmm.
And it seems to be there's a lot of book deals that are being uh, inked right now with a bunch of different authors from the United States and wherever else. A lot of the people I follow on Twitter are American and Canadian, so
Hmm.
I don't really know what's happening in Europe or anywhere else. But yeah, it definitely seems as though publishing has had a bit of a renaissance. Um, but I don't know from within the publishing world how much it's changed from the past. I'm sure most people who would publish books that are not bestsellers would tell me. I would give me a nice reality check. But yeah, I'm looking forward to just trying something new. That's what
That's
it's all about.
fantastic. And it's just a proposal at this point, not any hardcore photography or writing.
No, well, like we're the book proposal that we're working on is in a few pages worth of an anecdote. It'll probably our proposal will probably be about uh, I don't know. The rough draft anyway will probably be about 15 pages. What happens after that, based on our response, remains to be seen.
But you're going to wait on a response before you actually punch out the book.
For now, yeah, but it could change depending on how we want to proceed when we get or don't get feedback. So yeah, I think we're both really interested in putting out the book, no matter what happens, just for the experience of doing it and having something out there that's an extension of yourself, but it's finally outside of your brain,
Hmm.
and people can read
Exactly.
it.
What do you do on a daily basis to exercise your writing muscles? Is it just your freelance work, or do you journal, blog, anything like that?
No, I don't journal or blog so much. Part of me wish I did, because I feel as though like the creative component sometimes is lacking in my life. But I'm also like, what do you do to relax when all you do is write? Do you write more?
Yeah, I just write more. I don't have any time to relax. I used to play video games, and I don't do that anymore either.
Yeah, but it's like that's a question to have with yourself when you're writing for a living, which I'm like extremely lucky to do. Um, like when you're tired of words on a screen, like do you just do more words on a screen? Like personally, like that hasn't been something I've done. I guess I could write it in a book like the old fashioned way. uh, but it feels as though it's kind of like the music thing where uh, you don't want to kill what you love,
Hmm.
or that Bukowski quote, something like "find what you love and let it kill you."
Hmm.
But uh, yeah, it's always like it's not set in stone for me. It's a little bit of a give and take, back and forth. Sometimes I feel really inspired to write just for myself, and other times I don't. Uh,
But
recently,
you never take yourself up on the offer to indulge.
mm, not usually, because uh, I feel like at the end of the day, my brain is empty. These days, anyway, the winter was really long and really hard, and it really affects me, like just this cold, miserable weather. So I'm just slowly recovering from that and starting to feel a bit more creative and inspired now. So maybe those, habits will change.
Have you ever written fiction? Or I mean, I know you did
No.
some poetry in your prep school days.
Um,
What would you write if you had, I don't know, the gumption to go in a more personal way?
to be honest with you, fiction is not really a big interest of mine.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
I've from even a really young age, I was always really interested in autobiographies and biographies. My stepmother has like more than 1,000 books, and a lot of them are those kinds of books, right? Autobiographies and biographies, books about music and musicians. So that was a large part of what I read. The earliest books that I read, when I was a kid, which probably are not very kid friendly, were like VC Andrews books, which are fiction.
Hmm.
Um, and, if you're not familiar with those books, I'm sure every woman listening to this knows what books I'm talking about.
I've never
These
read
kind
them. Like, what is it called? Roses in the Attic or Flowers in the Attic or something like that, right?
Yeah, Flowers in the Attic was one
Flowers
of
in the
her
Attic.
earlier books, her earlier series. Just these stories about, messed up kids doing messed up things. When you're a messed up kid, it's great to learn about other messed up kids. You don't feel so messed up. So
So okay, so I mean, in terms of the band book, that would be your indulgence. The
yeah,
band, yeah.
yeah, I'm looking at it as kind of a creative writing project at this point. Um, you know, I have no illusions. I'm sure it won't make any money, especially if
Would
it's
that be your only
self-published.
motivation to write it?
No, well, that's what I'm saying. I have no illusions, like, but I still want to do it.
I
Like
hope you
not
do.
everything I do can, not everything I do can be like money driven because and become like a shell of a person. That's why I play music. I'm certainly not going to be in a band. Definitely not like world touring band unless like I really get better. But but yeah, I do it for fun. Music. The reason to learn drums actually became out of this desire to do something creative that wasn't writing. Just something, anything. Music seemed like a natural course of action considering what kind of importance it's had in my life. So that's kind of the motivation behind it. And also, I always felt like I had a good sense of rhythm. So
That's cool. I'm so happy. I never I never got paid to write. So it's never been a job for me. It's always just been fun, a joke, basically, something enjoyable to do. So even when I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I pound out words, it's just a joy. You know what I mean? It's just a really fun thing, like playing music, I guess.
yeah, I think anyone who can make a living off of writing is should consider themselves really lucky because it is such a privilege to have this kind of job. Um, it's definitely challenging, and to be a freelancer, like if you have to really have that conversation with yourself about like how much content writing you want to do, like going back to that content marketing thing, like journalists are being tapped for writing content, um, and they're extremely well, they're definitely more lucrative than writing for newspapers and magazines, even when you compare how much time it takes to write these pieces. I think the bottom will probably fall out and people will get distracted by the next, advent in advertising and marketing. But for now, like it's a good place for writers to make money. Um,
How would you
and
recommend somebody getting involved if they wanted to?
um, it's a little bit of like an SEO game to some
Yeah.
extent. Like sometimes I get emails from like strangers who found my website because when they type in like freelance writer, Montreal freelance writer, like I'm one of the people who comes up. So like there's a bit of like that soul killing aspect to it, like how to market yourself online. And like your LinkedIn or I wouldn't necessarily say like you have to do all the social channels. Like you don't have to make yourself like a public Facebook page or anything like that. But at least Twitter helps you uh, not necessarily stand out because everyone's on Twitter. Like all the
Hmm.
journalists that exist in the world are on Twitter, so it's hard to stand out against them. But at least um, helping you to find your voice, seeing what other people are doing. Like I use Twitter mostly to read interesting news, uh, stories that people recommend instead of just staying inside my little bubble and reading what I would normally read. Um, and yeah, like LinkedIn or whatever. I don't know. Do people like use LinkedIn? I guess they do.
I don't know. I think more professional people do, honestly, like
Yeah, like
anchors or whatnot.
I've seen surprising stats. Uh, Surprising to me because of what I just said. Do people even use LinkedIn? But actually, people do use LinkedIn. Um,
For
and
creative content?
Yeah, and supposedly it's one of the more successful platforms to share work, to share your stories. So all these content marketing pieces that are getting created, if you put them on LinkedIn, chances are that more people will look at them from LinkedIn instead, like as opposed to like Twitter or Facebook or something like
That's
that.
interesting.
So it'll continue to be a thing, I think. But yeah, just in terms of marketing yourself, like it's important to have some sort of social component to what you do, and like make yourself stand out in SEO or whatever.
Yeah, it's
I
interesting
don't
because
have
you
I
do.
don't have the recipe though.
No, I don't understand how you stand out to me either, though, because you're just a random person that I happened upon with Twitter.
I'm
How
definitely a
did I
random
connect with you?
person.
I know exactly. And I was drawn to what you said. At one point you posted an article about farming, and from that point on, I just started seeing your name pop up my Twitter feed over and over and over again.
I guess that's what happens with their algorithms, right? They keep reminding you about people. But yeah, I don't know. I share stories that I write for different publications. I probably share too much of my opinion, my stupid jokes that I think are
Well,
funny.
not
But
enough, honestly. I enjoy your opinions. I enjoy this conversation as well. I'm sorry that we're saying goodbye and I kind of turned it around on you there in a little bit. Um, but you started saying something I was really interested in. And I look forward to engaging with you on Twitter. And like I said before, I'll put your Twitter handle on my in the show notes and your website. And hopefully we can continue interacting and I'll get you back on the podcast in a few months and we'll see how things are going with your proposal.
great.
Thank you very much for doing this with me, Tracey.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Tracey Lindeman. Show notes for her contact information. Um, I guess the sad news is she's moving from Montreal. That would break my heart too. It's one of the more European cities in North America. It's beautiful up there. If you've not had an opportunity to visit it, I highly recommend it. She says, don't go in the winter. I went in February. It's one of the experiences I think you should have in life, the Canadian winter. That wind is brutal. My lips hurt for months afterward. But those Montreal bagels, I think they do rival New York. My wife says it, agrees at least. Episode number 9, we do have it coming up. Hunter Motts guested. I can't believe it. I'm sure he can't either. 2 hours worth of a conversation with that gentleman. It was a fantastic experience. We talked about his book, The Straight A Conspiracy. Check it out. Have it up. It's a great talk. Soon. Bye.